Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I am Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool, and today we are reviewing the Cowboys' Week 12 loss to the Raiders. First and foremost, Landon, how was your Thanksgiving?
You know, it's hard to recover from this when you're a Cowboys fan. This kind of thing usually can kind of really take a dent to it. So when this, being the experienced Cowboys fan, I'm used to this, right? So I really took the time to kind of try to just walk away from the football game for a little while and be close to family and kind of do more Thanksgiving stuff, and I was able to salvage something. But every time that my mind wandered back to this, I felt well. I'll tell you how I felt when we're going to talk about it. I felt angry, I felt disappointed, and then as the day went on, I felt slightly hopeful.
So part of the reason we didn't do this show last night or earlier today was I was just too angry. Like that's part of the reason why. Also, I had Raider stuff I had to do. Plus, we had some family obligations. But if you ask my family how I'm feeling about this game right now, they probably would give you some different thoughts because I was not a happy camper today.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the Cowboy game. They lose to the Raiders 36-33 in overtime. It's the Cowboys have lost 3 of their last 4 games. They lost 3 out of the 4 games in the AFC West. The only team they beat was the Chargers in week 2, and that was a 3-point game. Landon, let's talk about your angry feeling. What makes you so angry about this game?
I mean, I don't want to do this, but clearly after a 28 flag, 200 plus yard total performance, I don't know how we don't talk about the refs, and this it's normal for specific fans teams to complain about the refs, but I don't understand how both sides, even the Raiders, even though they won, aren't absolutely furious with the way that this game was officiated. It was unprofessional, is what it was, and I think Jerry walked the tightrope perfectly when he was explaining it, that this is the most watched game in the league outside of the Super Bowl.
Did you see the numbers in this game?
I didn't actually. I know they were incredible.
It's the highest regular season game since 1990.
It's Jerry called it, right? So it's the NFL's opportunity to kind of
step a showcase game, right?
To showcase to the people that aren't watching NFL games regularly. I don't know how that is the product that the NFL wants to put out there. Like, I just can't understand how the NFL isn't furious with what happened on Sunday. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was absolutely the most dominant force in the game in which the referees are supposed to be transparent. This is not baseball where the refs are supposed to have a say on every single snap or play that happens. All right. Like, this is supposed to be a transparent situation. And I think the thing that was the most disgusting to me is that you knew the penalty when the penalties were coming, and they came every single time. I went back and counted, and again, I hate talking about this stuff. I hate this. I hate that we're talking about this. But on 8, the Raiders, by my count, had 8 scoring drives at different points. 6 of the 8 were extended due to penalty. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely unconscionable. And that's absolutely ridiculous. Just the sheer volume of penalties that were called by the referees it's ridiculous. And it's been happening all over the league. This isn't the first game that this happened to the Cowboys. I've complained about this when the Cowboys have won. And it's just, this has made me that aspect of it, more than my disappointment in how the Cowboys played or whatever. That part of it was so all-encompassingly infuriating. It was hard to look past anything else, honestly, because it felt like it was the thing that was controlling the game completely from almost start to finish.
And I know there's a lot of people out saying, the refs are bad, but they weren't the reason why you lost. The Cowboys still had other chances to win this game. That's true. The Cowboys did have other chances to win this game. But I like the way Michael Gallup said it. He's like, the last couple of weeks we've been fighting uphill against 2 different teams. And it's really true. Like, they are good enough to beat anybody in the league. I don't know if they're good enough to beat 2 teams on the same day. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And it's just one of those things where if they were committing terrible these awful penalties and or it was Chaz Green trying to hold whoever, like when it was actually happening, there's just nothing, you don't have any other option. Half of these calls were absolutely
Well,
terrible, and then that's not even to start talking about the clear fumble and play by
well,
42 on in the first
that's
part of the
actually the
game.
one that I want to talk about because that's oh man, we're getting into
The
this
process
conversation.
there again, the process there is just as infuriating as
That's
everything else about it.
that's honestly that's the part that makes me upset and nervous going forward is look how quickly the NFL made a call that was the way Terry McClure said it was non-clear and non-obvious, and they flipped it right away and made it so Dallas couldn't challenge it. If they can do that and it's hey, it's no big deal. We're just going to make those kind of calls whenever we feel like the game is changing. That's some awful football that I don't think anybody's going to want to see.
It's so crazy that no one saw that was clearly what was happening. Did you see how late in the situation the refs came back to call that an incomplete
Well,
pass? Like
I don't know if you saw
clearly
the post game press conference, but they asked Mike McCarthy what happened, and he
they,
said,
they told him, right, that the NFL called down,
"Yeah,
right?
well, they said they ruled it on the field
Yeah.
as a fumble recovered by Dallas. The replay assist said it was clear and obvious that it was an incomplete pass. They overturned it, and that's why McCarthy literally couldn't challenge it. He didn't have the
Yes.
option because the replay already did it." And
Yeah.
that's not what the intent for replay assist to do. It's supposed to be, hey, there is a guy stepped out of bounds at this spot, boom, we can move him back 5 yards. Not, hey, we're going to change a course of a fumble that's very, very 50-50 to the Raiders. And let's hurry up and move on before we talk too much about it. That's
Yeah.
not how it was designed.
It's funny because I had like 20 different people that were yelling at me about why didn't they, including some people from SI, were like, why aren't they challenging this? Why aren't they challenging this? And I was like, clearly the NFL has made their call on what they've decided that it's going to happen here, and we're not going to get a say there. And then after that came again a barrage of penalties. I mean, I didn't check, but I'm assuming that that's the most penalties in definitely in the Cowboys game. I'm assuming history, but is it maybe of all time? I mean,
It's most penalties by a single team since the merger.
that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, and it wasn't. And the funny thing is that they
broke
talked
it in the third quarter. By the way, they didn't even need the fourth quarter. They broke it in the third quarter.
They talked about it was funny because in the game they kept on talking about how clean these teams were playing, that they weren't throwing interceptions, that they weren't fumbling the ball. It's crazy that they were able to play clean enough to contain the ball and not fumble the ball and execute on the field, but also break the record since the merger in penalties. It's almost like those two facts kind of don't match up, how cleanly these teams were playing in certain ways, but constantly committing penalties somehow. And look, I mean, I don't know if we're ever not going to have face guarding as a defensive pass interference, despite it not being in the rule book for the last several years. Terry McCauley even described face guarding as his excuse for why that should have been a penalty. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills again. And yeah, again, the NFL for as much money as there's put into this league, and we'll move on. We got to move on.
Yeah.
For as much money as put into this league, the NFL officiating group is an embarrassment, and it's the NFL's fault, not the officiating. They do not invest anything here. They do not hire these guys full time. This is ridiculous. Ed Hockley's son should not be doing primetime games because he's Ed Hockley's son. That's ridiculous. We need to have professional officiators who do this better, because your billion-dollar product is kind of looking like crap when you're showcasing it to the people that you need to draw in to get more fans.
I couldn't say it any better myself. The officiating is just atrocious this year, and I say this every year, but they're literally costing people jobs and money, and some of the coaches are gonna get fired, players are gonna get replaced because of how
Connor
bad
Williams.
the officials are this year.
We'll talk about that in the next segment, but they swapped Connor Williams because of all the holding calls. Maybe literally. We shouldn't be letting the officials be giving us judgments on how they feel like our players are playing. It's just
they're
not qualified.
All right, let's take a break so I can tell you guys about Stat Hero. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're going up against. Stat Hero is the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup, winner takes all. And here's the crazy part. Stat Hero even shows you their lineups before you play, and then you can handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. This never before seen innovation of a fantasy sports and fantasy sports betting hybrid is Stat Hero, as it pins players clocking the odds that are over 4 times better than what they're used to seeing. Stat Hero head-to-head is what daily fantasy should be, one-on-one. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. And then you use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. All right, Landon, let's talk about our disappointment in this game. And I'm sure you feel the same way I do. Cowboys had multiple chances to win this game, whether it was, at the last possession of the game where you could go down and score a touchdown rather than settling for a field goal, whether it's in the first possession of overtime where you get the ball first, you go down and score the touchdown, the game is over. They had their chances to win this game, and they just didn't do it. And it's frustrating because this team has not looked very good over the last month, and it's disappointing to see how much they've fallen off.
So my who I'm disappointed in specifically, there's sort of certain players that obviously I felt like played poorly. I felt like both former Atlanta safeties had really rough days. KZ and 42, like Neil made what was an incredibly smart football play and what should have been a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He doesn't get credit for. I will give you credit for that, Neil. Absolutely fantastic play. But I think after just watching this, like, he is just not a full-time linebacker.
They've got major linebacker problems.
Yep, absolutely they do. Because LVE played a pretty terrible game as well. And if you're going to play, I mean, hopefully what you do is you get more snaps at Parsons. I hate to even say that with Gregory back there, but Gregory and Lawrence when they come back, but especially with the way that Parsons is playing a defensive end, but you almost have to do it because you don't really have a choice.
See, this is how the Donovan Wilson injury really hurts them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If Wilson's healthy, you can either play him as a linebacker, or more than likely you can play J-Ron Kearse there. But they can't really do that when they, the other two safeties are Malik Hooker and DeMonte Casey. You just don't have any size.
Yeah. I think they just need to start playing Hooker more. I think he's been playing Casey, solid at times. What?
Yeah. I think over Casey.
Yeah, over Casey. Yeah. That's what I was going. Yeah. But honestly, the group that I'm the most disappointed in is the coaches. I just feel like this was one of the first games where I really disagreed with a lot of the play calling. They just didn't seem to have a plan. Look, let's start from the beginning. One, did they honestly think that CeeDee Lamb was going to play this week? Because if they did, that's ridiculous, and they should not have game planned.
I guess Dak said Wednesday night they knew.
Okay, that's good. That makes me feel better about one thing. I think the first question, and honestly, just because of the nature of the game, this wasn't the lead off, but this to me is the lead of the whole situation. Why did the Cowboys have another week where they played a completely different starter on an offensive line that just had to change the previous week? For a guy that, I think Steele, I like him at right tackle. I'm certainly interested in him playing over Lael if Lael continued to play poorly. But the idea that you're going to change offensive tackles the week that you're playing the Raiders, which one of the only things the Raiders really, really do well is rush the passer. And after, like I said, a week after changing another position for a non-injury reason, just taking out a long-time starter, a guy that started many games. And I understand why. I understand that he had too many penalties, but I once again submit to you the NFL officiating before I think that that's a good judgment call, because McGovern struggled. I think Steele played fine, but ultimately the offensive line did not play well. And I have to think that since the most important thing that is involved in offensive line play is continuity between guys, that back-to-back weeks, instead of just doing it in 1 week, back-to-back weeks of changing guys around and changing guys out of the starter spots might have caused some issues with the continuity and the offensive line blocking. And you know what? Clearly, it looked like it both in the pass blocking and in run blocking.
I'm disappointed with the coaching staff as well on both sides of the ball. Let's start with Dan Quinn. Once Darren Waller went out of this game, you had one job: stop Hunter Renfrow. The
Yeah.
Raiders all year are a team where if you take away Hunter Renfrow, this is an offense that's really, really not very good because Derek Carr does not trust Zay Jones and he does not trust Brian Edwards on the outside, which basically means he's only going to throw to the middle of the field. Once Waller was out, bracket Hunter Renfrow and you completely stop the offense. They didn't. Hunter Renfrow had the most yards in his career against Dallas, 154. That's just unacceptable. On top of this, Landon, and we talked about this on the crossover podcast. I know you weren't on that one, but Derek Carr going into this game had the NFL's best passer rating against the blitz. He had the most passing yards and the highest completion percentage. Dallas blitzed on almost every key down on this game. And I don't understand why. I know that they don't feel great about their pressure with just 4, but that's not really the point. One of the things that Carr does really well and really poorly at the same time is he gets rid of the ball about 2.5 seconds, whether he's pressured or not. So why send extra guys? I don't get it.
I really feel like we criticized the backups who didn't step up last week, but I think my thought to me was this week was that the backups, those guys who didn't play well last week, were going to have good games this week because the default for a lot of these guys and the guys that we're talking about are like, Cedric Wilson, Noah Brown, Terrence Steele.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that really had bad games last week that contributed to the fact that the Cowboys couldn't move the ball. I didn't think that we needed like the kind of schematic overall like overreach to the other way to try to counteract it. But that's what
I thought
happened.
all those guys played well for the most part.
I thought those guys played well, but the problem was that the Cowboys decided to go into their shell both on offense and defense. I always thought that and blitzing isn't necessarily going into your shell, but it's like they weren't mixing it up. I thought every single time I saw you tweet, why are they blitzing? Why are they blitzing? In the back of my head, I kept on thinking at some point they're gonna on a big third down, what they'll do is they'll show it again and then they'll pull back and then they'll get a pick. And that's what like or they'll get it, but they never did. And it was frustrating because ultimately the defense, was able to make stops at different points. And when they were able to make stops, that's when the penalties came in. So,
the other frustrating thing is watch Micah Parsons in this game. And because I tortured myself and rewatched it, but he was dominating on the edges, like absolutely dominating. Every single third down, he was not on the edge. He was lined up right over the A gap. And so what did the Raiders do? They pinched their protection in. And it gave Derek Carr a nice pocket, and Parsons was neutralized. I don't understand it. You're better off just keeping him as a spy so he doesn't rush for 25 yards on a 3rd and 13 than just going right up the middle.
I think that they thought that maybe that they could find a way to, like they couldn't get him help if he came from the inside, but they didn't need to. They just needed to muddy up the middle of the blocking in the middle of the line, and he couldn't get through anyway. So they just basically pinched in and he just, they didn't do a slide. They just did a pinch in and they just muddied it up.
They weren't afraid of Armstrong and Golston beating them on the edge. And it's just, it was a short week. So you really wonder how much the Dallas scout the Raiders, because when I watched that game, it seemed like they had no idea what the Raiders were good and bad at. It just, every other team over the last month has figured out you don't blitz Carr, you stay back in a cover 2 and you force him to throw the ball underneath over and over again. And Dallas did the exact opposite.
Yeah, and then on offense, it felt like they should have just spread it out and threw the ball earlier than they did. They clearly immediately had success when they did it. They needed to get Dak into a rhythm, and that will kind of lead us into what gives me hope. When we talk about the last segment, but I think that it was frustrating that they didn't get to that earlier. I totally understand the game plan of trying to run the ball and just keep the ball away just because you don't have all your stars. You're trying to just grind out a win. You feel like you're the better team, and that's a way that you can bully them into winning. But at the same time, it wasn't working. Like you weren't running the ball successfully. You weren't having a good day running the football. So I wish they had made more adjustments sooner until waiting until the very end of the game. And look, the credit goes to them to get themselves back into position to be in that game, to tie, to get into overtime. They deserve that credit. But I think, again, it goes to the point that I don't know that you needed to wait to a 2-minute situation to run that offense, to run
But you know what's
hurry
so
up, for
frustrating
goodness
though
sakes.
is
Like,
they
it
had
just
so much success in the fourth quarter running that offense, and as soon as the overtime hits, they're
it went right
oh
back
man,
to it.
their 3 plays that they ran were awful. So it was a first down run to Ezekiel Elliott. Why Zeke was out there at that point, I have no idea. He, I mean, we know he's really banged up, but
He's
it was
hurting, and
clear.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
clear
clear
that
who was
Pollard was
running
playing
better,
better.
right?
Yeah,
It
clearly.
was clear. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that Pollard's a better running back than Zeke,
No,
although
it's
you can
just that
make the
Pollard
case.
was, the hot hand, and that's the point
But
of having
yeah,
having
yeah.
that situation,
So
right?
so you run that play, and then on the next play, you run a screen to, or excuse me, they run a throw to Noah Brown that's way out of bounds. Okay, or excuse me, I got to back up. Run on first down. Second down, they run a screen to Zeke, and it's blocked really well. All Zeke has to do is explode through the first cut, and he's gaining 30 yards. He gets tripped up because he just has a hard time getting going because of the knee. And now it's 3rd and 2, and they miss a pass to Noah Brown, and that's basically the game. It was frustrating.
It was extremely frustrating. And
Ah,
and and it felt like it was the first time that, and look, there's I'm not I'm not worried about it, because I think that what the problem was is that they overreacted to like the way that the backups played last week. And they knew that they didn't have those guys, the same guys next week. They should have trusted Cedric Wilson. They should have trusted Noah Brown, that they were going to get their acts together and play better football, because they ended up doing it. And I think that if they had continued to play that way and spread them out and throw the ball around a little bit more instead of just trying to grind it out, look, it wasn't working. Like, make that adjustment. That's
yeah.
continue to try to bang your head there. Like, that's what we have been doing previously. That's why it was so frustrating to watch. Is somebody made the comment? It's like watching the 2018, 2019 Dallas
2019
Cowboys.
Cowboys, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was like, because the offense didn't trust their wide receivers to make plays when they needed to. Well, I mean, they didn't trust them to make plays early in the downs,
Yep.
early in the set of downs,
Yep.
in order to put them in good position. And they had banged up running back who wasn't playing well, and they didn't feel like they could give Pollard enough touches. So
This is the frustrating thing is in 3 of the last 4 games, all against AFC West opponents, basically all of them have said, hey, we're going to load up and stop the run, try to beat us through the air. And when the Cowboys did try to beat them through the air, they did, like carved them up. I don't understand when they absolutely needed it in overtime, why they went back into their shell. I don't get it. Let's talk about some reasons why you should be hopeful and optimistic about this team. But before we do that, we should tell you guys to go to BetOnline. It remains your number one spot for all the sports action during this Thanksgiving holiday. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile site to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus with promo code Locked On. And it's not just football. BetOnline has pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, and even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. We should also tell you guys about Built Bar. You know Built Bar. It's the best tasting protein bar out there. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate, amazing flavors, just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Go to builtbar.com right now and use promo code LOCK20. And again, LOCK20. You can get 20% off your orders for just the next 2 days. So again, promo code LOCK20 at builtbar.com. All right. I'll tell you a quick story before we talk about this why to be optimistic. One of my friends, Elliot Harrison, who I do a podcast with, the Power Ranking Show, he called me this morning to check on me because he knew I'd be upset, and I was.
good on
He
you,
said,
Elliot. Good on you.
Yeah, he's also a big Cowboy fan, but he was saying, listen, the Cowboys just played a C- game in which they had 166 penalty yards, and they went to overtime against a probably playoff team in the AFC. It's not the end of the world for Dallas. Yes, it hurts to lose those games, but it's not the worst thing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and ultimately, I think we saw again what left me feeling better about the game was that what we saw in the fourth quarter is that Dak is still Dak. And that when it's time to throw for a whole bunch of yards and score
Well, it
touchdowns.
depends on who you ask if Dak is still Dak. Some people think he is the problem.
Well, I mean, but he's not. Like, I mean, that's the thing is, I feel like Dak, did he have some bad throws? Absolutely. But like a bad Dak game is like 3 or 4 bad throws and still 7 or 8 like ridiculous, amazing throws. And so you add in Cooper, you add in CeeDee Lamb back to this, which they'll be back next week or this other day, I think. I mean, I would imagine that Lamb should be, and then that Cooper should be at that point done with COVID protocol, hopefully. You're also, I mean, guys, surprise, we're here. It's Tank Vember. I mean, he's going to be back potentially this next week. Gallimore's on the way.
Yep.
Yeah, if not, Gallimore's on his way back. We're going to start seeing these guys roll back in. Hopefully they figure out the offensive line situation and stop rolling in different. We didn't even talk about the fact that they substituted offensive line during this game.
It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
No, wait. Can I talk about something real quick? Somebody on Twitter had the audacity to call me out for saying that they were tinkering with the offensive line. If that is not tinkering with the offensive line, I don't know what is. Like, so hopefully they will stop tinkering, settle in on a line, just go with it. And this is still an incredibly talented team. None of those things have changed. They still have a commanding lead in the NFC East, despite what everyone's trying to tell you. The Eagles have a really easy schedule, but guess what, guys? So do the Cowboys. Look what the Saints just did like last week. So, and they're probably one of the best teams you have left to play outside of Arizona. So, the sky is not falling yet. It's terrible. This was an awful game to watch. This was an awful game to experience over Thanksgiving. All of us have the right to be furious and pissed at both the refs and the coaching and how the players played. All of that is true. But it doesn't take away the fact that this is still an incredibly talented team that was missing basically all of their superstars outside of Dak, including Zeke, because he was basically a shell of himself. So I think, this team is going to get markedly better in just a week. And I think the week after that, it will get even better than that. So this team is still hasn't seen their best game yet, I don't think. And they still got a lot of football left.
Yeah, so I think you can make a good case. They were missing 4 of their 9 best players last night, with the 5 that played being Dak, Michael Parsons, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and then whoever else you want to throw in there, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup, or whatever. But when you're missing that much talent, it's not surprising that you're probably going to struggle, especially with 2 of those guys. Well, both of those guys really play in the same position, right? 2 receivers and 2 defensive ends. Well, it's really hard to overcome that.
What are the 2 most important things that you have to do? What's the most important thing you need to do on offense? Throw the football well. What's the most important thing you need to do on defense? Rush the passer well. Well, I mean, I think other people would say cover, but I think it's all on a ratio, right? Yeah. You lose your top 2 guys on both of those spots. Yeah, it's gonna make a marked difference on how you play. Now, again, I wish the coaching staff had made less of a swerving adjustment to what happened in the Kansas City game and just knock it off to bad play, because I think they showed you that the backups can play a little bit if you trust them. But, and ultimately, I think it was more the overcompensation, that being, including way more blitzing than they needed and just running the football instead of trusting their wide receivers. I think that those 2 things can be accredited as the second and third biggest influences to why you lost the game outside of the obvious.
I'm still so upset about this game. It's so frustrating. I'm just thinking about all the bad calls, like not officiating calls. I'm saying bad play calls the Cowboys had. Which was your least favorite? Was it the 3rd and 18 playing man-to-man and having everybody at the line of scrimmage? Or was it Kellen Moore on the 2-point conversion? You have the ball at the 1-foot line and you run a pitch 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
I think it's the pitch. Just lean the ball over. Lean the ball over the goal line.
If that's the play you're going to run, why do you even line up to kick the extra point? Because it doesn't really matter if you're at the 1 or the 2. No, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Just relax. Hopefully it gets better. Right. Thursday is going to be a huge game. By the way, you're going into New Orleans to play the Saints. It sounds like Alvin Kamara is going to be back. Their offensive tackles are going to be back. The Saints have lost.
But who's playing quarterback?
I mean, if Dallas loses that game, we're having a entirely different conversation. Now we are talking about the NFC East being up for grabs, right?
If the Eagles win next week and the Cowboys lose, I mean, with all these guys back, then we've got troubles for
We
sure.
got trouble. Yeah, but it wasn't too long ago, Landon. You and I were sipping our drinks, doing our show in
I
Hawaiian shirts, and now things have changed pretty quickly, right? That's
I
the
have it
NFL for you.
staring me in the eye on my desktop right now, and it's mocking me right now, mocking me.
But that's just the way life is in the NFL. Would not surprise me. Dallas wins next 2-3 games. The schedule's pretty soft, and all of a sudden we're 11-4 going into Christmas, right? That's just the way the NFL is. It's a strange, strange game.
Absolutely. I mean, look, if you tell me that coming into the season that the defense looked pretty good except for the linebackers, uh, when we had all these linebackers, I would have been
Uh,
pretty shocked, to be honest. Yeah, this is it's up and down, and there's enough of the ball bounces a weird way, and then the ref kicks it a little bit. So
and if you
that's
pick
the
it
way it
up,
is.
they'll just throw a flag down. So
Yep.
it kind of nullifies it. All right. Well, we got to go. I hope you guys all enjoyed your Thanksgiving. Enjoy the
Yeah.
games on Sunday. Later, we got another really condensed week here because the
Yeah.
Cowboys play on Thursday. We'll have a crossover show. We'll try to go through this all 22 film over the weekend or whenever we get a chance to see if our eyes don't bleed. But so make sure you guys are tuning in, downloading the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on YouTube. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I am at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you next time.